Hello, everyone. This is Stephen with the Would Somebody Testify podcast. I am your host, Steve Wood. Today, with me, I have the one, the only Little John Widner. Greetings.
Greetings. How you doing, Stephen?
I'm doing all right. If for those of you who don't know him, he's Little John, like as I understand the original Little John, aka not so little.
Yeah.
How tall are you? I do not remember.
6'3", weigh about 300 pounds. Of a very small and petite man is what I am.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So he is here to tell how he wound up in getting saved, and I don't know how far he's going to go. I usually don't. So I'll open the floor to you.
All right. Like he introduced, I'm Jonathan Widner. I was born and raised on how I would say the outskirts of Holiness. My aunt and uncle are brother Fred Wood and sister Beth Wood from California. In the Holiness Fellowship, they go to Riverbank Free Holiness Church. Them and my cousins, their sons and daughters, were around me when I grew up and stuff, and that's my relationship to the Holiness movement. And my grandma and grandpa, they both, I don't know if they were raised Holiness. I don't know exactly what they were raised, but I know that growing up, they were Holiness in my eyes, or not my eyes, but they went to a Holiness church. They lived Holiness. They were great inspirations and how would you say that? Just examples of Holiness people, and just a good example of people in my eyes, and it's what my closest relationship to Holiness was. But I grew up, my dad and my mom, when I first was born, they were going to church. They were Holiness. They were trying their best, or I don't know how you'd say that, but they were in church. They were going to church. My sister, she's a couple years older than me. She was in church with them, and I was born, and I think they went to church for the next couple years, off and on and stuff, but really, I don't remember ever consistently going to church just in every single weekend, every single midweek service. I never remember that. I was too young to remember when they would do that. But they were, slowly were fading from it. I know that. They were getting further and further away from it, further and further away from Holiness, church in general. But growing up, my dad, he would still take us to church, in a different, not a Holiness church, but a church in our hometown. And my grandparents, every once in a while, we go with them to the actual Holiness church and get to know people in it and just that home church, and get to be in church. Sunday school, my grandma taught us, me and my sister, in Sunday school. And then later years, my Uncle Eddie in the teenage class when we would go, barely. But we still had a close relationship, and through those years of growing up, my family, my parents started to go further and further away. I think it was about when I was in the 5th grade or 6th grade that they got a divorce. Me and my dad and my mom got a divorce, and it kind of split it split them up, of course. But they split up, and throughout the years, my only connection to the Holiness movement or the Holiness church were my grandparents, and I would come to the Western Holiness Youth Camp that's held in California every year, and that was my connection to Holiness and the Holiness people. I still had my aunts and uncles that would come around and be a part of they were a part of the family, so I'd get to see them and hang out with them, and they were really my connection to the Holiness movement. Is a great connection because it was my only consistent thing through those years of the divorce and my family splitting up and a broken home. I could rely on the church, the Holiness people, as a consistency in my life of these people are the same, not my dad and my mom changing every single time I was around them, different things happening and them changing because they didn't know how life was going and their lives weren't together as much as just me trying to make my own way or trying to learn how to live. And as a young man growing up, parents being divorced, you don't need that in your life at all. You need a consistency. But that was what the Holiness people brought to me. They brought a consistency, and it was just such a joy to be with them. And I had great times being with everybody and just enjoying Holiness. Through the youth camps and through those years of going to youth camp every single year, I found great joy in the people. I didn't get much spiritual help looking back now through those first couple years or growing up from, I don't know when I started going, but as far as I remember, as young as I possibly was, I went every single year before my parents were divorced, during the divorce and everything. And for the first how many ever years, I really didn't know anything about God or religion or living holiness, but I knew I'm around these people and their lives are together. They have joy that nobody else around me has. When I go back home, when I'm living or I'm around my dad's friends, my mom's friends, my other family that weren't in church, they didn't have a peace. They didn't have a joy upon them like the people I got together with at this camp. If that's how I thought about it. Was these people are different. There's something different about them. And through those years of just learning to love the Holiness people and loving church, I got a desire to keep on going. My grandparents, like I said, they were a great inspiration to me and great examples. And just like my aunt and uncle, they were great examples. They were those same people. They had the joy. They had the happiness that I was lacking, that I didn't get at home. It was either there's always fights going on. My dad tried his best to have joy and make it. Me and my sister, when we going through the divorce, we both talked about it, and we both said that no matter what happens when we are married, if we have kids in the future, we are not going to get a divorce because of how bad it was on us, because of we had it better than a ton of families. Some families, they don't. They end up where kids leave other kids. The family does not stay together at all. Like some families, they'll split up. The sons won't remember their sisters, and it's just an absolute total mess. And ours was as clean as it possibly could be. And we both told each other that no matter what happens, if we're not going to get a divorce with our companion's future in life, because that's, even if it's as good as it possibly can go, that's not it doesn't bring anything. Or sorry, I'm scrambled. It's not good for a young man, good for your family. No matter how much happiness it brings the parents. I heard somebody from the Holiness movement, after I got saved, they talked to me and they said that a therapist was talking to a man and a woman as they're getting divorced, going through it, and they tried to tell the therapist that it's just breaking their hearts. They don't know what it hurts them so much, that to see what their kids are going through. And the therapist told them, not enough. It does not hurt you enough because you would stop. If it hurt you that bad, you would stop getting divorced. You'd get away from that, because if it really hurts you, seeing what your kids are going through, you'd stop. But back to getting on youth camp and the amount of support and friends and life through those years. It wasn't up until about 13 or I think 14 when I seriously was at a youth camp and I seriously got into a service. I remember one year in a morning service, I was praying, and halfway through praying, I got a bloody nose, and I had no desire to get up and run to the bathroom or try to stop that. I just let it bleed, and people were bringing me tissues, but I was getting something. I was getting help, and something I'd never felt before. And so I prayed through a bloody nose, and I tried my best to seek or just stay in that peace, because that's something I did not get at home. There's something about the people, the something about the Spirit of God touching a young man that has no peace at home, that can't get away for 5 seconds at all. He has no escape. And then when he can go and he can get down on his knees and pray, and God touch him in a way that he's never felt before, I could have had a bloody nose, a broken leg. I would have stuck there. I would have tried my best to stay there and just enjoy that. And through those years, I'm 22 right now. I got saved when I was 18, but when I was 13 when I was 13, my that first year I got touched. I think it was about 13 or 14. I can't remember the exact year, how old I was, but that's when I first got that first touch, and I feel like I completely got saved. And right then I was getting into sports, going into high school. Sports has always been was a big thing in my life throughout the years. My parents always drove me to do sports. They always drove me to be an athlete. And so going into high school, I had sports and church were my two big decisions in life. And that year going into high school, I went to that youth camp. I got touched. I feel like I got saved, but I came back to high school or getting ready for sports, and that quickly took over my mind, getting focused on organized sports, football, getting ready for the football season. And I slowly just started getting away from church. I didn't have anybody at home pressing me to go to church. I had my grandparents. If I asked them to, they would have took me. But I didn't have a desire to go to church, I didn't have a push and other people with me trying to go and trying to push me towards that. So I quickly fell to sports. What I would say my idol, what I was following, the thing I worshipped was sports, and myself through those years of what's best for me and anything that would benefit me was what I was trying to do physically and worldly, carnally. And then I go through a year of high school, and I came back for another youth camp, and God touched me again. He gave me a second touch of grace, and I got saved again. And he really touched me so in such a great way that year, and more than the year before. And when I got back away from the youth camp, I came in and I got back straight into sports. I lasted a little bit longer than the year before because I had some family up there throughout that summer with me, and I was going to church more often. But as soon as my cousin left, because he was working in towns throughout the weeks and stuff, he left, I slowly just backed off of church again, and I backslid. To be 100% honest, I backslid. That's the second time I backslid. And going through the next couple years, I had excuses every single time youth camp came around. It was either I had some condition with my heart, which was towards sports, and the next year I think was a camp for sports, a football camp. And so I was really influenced by sports, and I got blind to the need of church and the seriousness of needing to get saved. And so I started following that, and then I slowly started drifting away from church. If my family was not in town, I didn't think of church. If my family wasn't around, I didn't think of church. When they were around, I still had a desire. If they invited me to go to church, I knew that's where I needed to be, that I would go. But unless my family was in town with me, my full thing was sports. I'm going to play sports. I'm going to go to college. I was planning to go to college for sports. And through some circumstances after my senior year, I decided I didn't end up going to college, and I decided to work. And in January of 2021, I graduated in 2020, and in January of 2021. My grandma, such a great influence in my life for church and holiness people, she passed away due to Alzheimer's. And right then is when I realized, and I got saved. I realized that I was not going to heaven. I was going to hell. I was sinning. I wasn't living right. And so my thought process was, I want to see my grandma in heaven. That was the reason I came back to church. I got saved again because my first thought was, I'm not going to heaven, and I want to see my grandma when I die. And so I got saved again, and it's been 3 years running now, and I can't explain why God would come back for a person 3 times and give me a third chance, because I was so unworthy of the first chance. He came again. He decided to give me some grace, and I'm so glad for that. His mercy just is there for me every single time growing up, and I'm so glad I serve a God like that, because if he didn't decide to reach down that third time, and I couldn't have blamed him once for not reaching down any of the times. But for me to go from him laying his hand of grace on me the first time, and I pushed him away, and I decided I'm going to go follow this, what my God was. I was going to go do sports. I'm going to follow something else. I don't want you, is what I basically told him 2 times. And every single time he still reached his hand of mercy down, and he did it again in 2021. And I haven't looked back, because I can't afford to look back. I got saved, and I'm so glad he saved me. No matter how far I went out, he was always there for me through those years. And that's kind of the fast and easy way to tell my testimony. But there's a lot of little details, how far I went out and what the things through the years of high school that I could explain. But in all reality, my testimony is God has reached down for me, and I'm a backslider, and I can say that, but not anymore. I'm saved, and the Lord has set me free, and I'm serving him, and it's been 3 years, and I'm so glad about it.
All right. Thank you. You mentioned your excuse was you had a heart condition that first year. What did you mean by that? I don't know sure what you meant.
My heart, when I was born with a hole in my heart, and the doctors, they think because of that and my rapid growing, like we said at the beginning of this, how big I was, my rapid growing through the years, they think because my heart had to grow at that size and heal that hole at the same time, I started getting heart palpitations every 7th beat. I have a double beat. And so they caught it at one of the physicals that I was doing for sports, and it went into testing, and I had to wear monitors for a couple days, and it just went through all these testing stages, gave me excuses to kind of, I can't make it to youth camp. I got to do this, and I got to wear this monitor for these days, and just gave me that excuse. But yeah.
I'm not thinking of anything, so I guess that'll be it for this interview.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on.
Oh, no problem.
This is one of those episodes where after the main interview, we continue talking. In this case, most of the audio was picked up rather well, though there is some more volume fluctuations than normal. There are also a few cuts made to just remove content not necessarily related to Brother John's testimony. Hope you enjoyed the remainder of this episode.
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I could put it all together a little bit better. So I don't know. I wish if I had notes, I could go from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next.
And filter out what you wanted to say.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Because there's a couple things that I went from, talking about youth camp to, divorce. Because if I could have my own way and say it, it would be like, well, I can say all the bad things about divorce. I could go the negatives, or I could go positives, because seriously, like I said about all the sports and stuff, it's truly, for me, and I'm not going to say sports is a sin because it's not, but for me to do organized sports, that's where the devil got me multiple times every single year. That's why I backslid. It's because I had a desire to play sports, and that's what took over in my life.
The time involved to play sports, the way it's played.
Because I seriously took 3 hours every single day at the end of school to go to a practice. And then Friday night, we didn't have practice, but we had a game. And then I did wrestling. So during that part of the year, we took 3 hours after to go practice for wrestling. And then on tournaments, sometimes we would take up 2 days out of the weekend, Friday and Saturday, to go to a tournament and wrestle. And then I did track and field, which I think was shorter practices, like 2 hour to hour 30 practice. But our track meets were a full day thing. You left early in the morning, left at 6 a.m. from our school, and then you were there. So the time, the effort, the push, and all that, it's hard for anyone, or just me, to balance God and sports. Even if your job won't allow you to balance, if you're working 20 hours a day or 15 hours a day, you have no time to pray, you have no time to read your Bible, you can't make services half the time. It's still, seek ye first the kingdom of God? Are you seeking your job first? Are you seeking sports first? Are you seeking God first? What are you putting in your life first? Do you have an idol?
Yeah, there was a time I was working. Oh, the hours were kind of crazy. And when I was in college, looking back, I managed my time so bad. I was working an insane amount. And looking back, that did quite a bit of damage to my spiritual life. It's not pretty.
Yeah.
Looking back, I wish I'd done it differently. At this point, I can just say, I see what it did to me. I'm going to try not to make that mistake twice.
Right. And I can advise people. I remember one youth camp, and I remember this devotion so well my counselor gave. He gave a devotion on seeking first the kingdom of heaven, and he got on jobs and other things in life, like what are you putting first? Because you can make the most money ever, and the Bible tells you to be a supplier of the family. You could supply every single bit of money. Your family won't struggle at all. But if you can't go to church, if you can't live serving God, but you're serving yourself, you're getting the money you need, everything's a balance. Because I've heard of families where they're barely making ends meet, but they're getting blessed by God. They're going to camp meetings. Their vacations are surrounded by camp meeting. That's what their desire is, to serve God, to be in camp meeting. And I feel like that might be a little bit of where my dad, he backslid. He's now a police officer. He makes very good money. And his wife, my stepmom, they both together make really good money, but he's lost. He had a desire at some point that something is bigger than God, something is more important than God, so I'm going to backslide. That's where I ran into. Something was bigger than God that I needed to pursue, and that's what made me backslide. I decided that God was not important enough, and that's where a lot of people backslide. You might think that, oh, but I'm not seriously bowing down to the sports poster. I have a poster of Elvis on my wall, but I'm not bowing down to it. Yeah, but if you start to just focus on that slowly, it gets you. It can easily snare you. And I've been reading recently in Judges, the children of Israel, and going back from making God upset at them because they started following other gods, the people around them, the other gods, the other tribes, and all that stuff. They started following other things. But at the end of it, they would cry out to Jesus, or they cry out to the Lord, and they would ask for forgiveness, and he would bring somebody. He'd anoint somebody. They'd bring somebody there to be a judge over them and help them get out of what they wanted. Get out of the oppression they had. And then within the next couple years after that generation of the children of Israel, after they forgot about those things, after the ones that remembered passed away, the new generation would come up and they would chase after other gods, and it was a cycle. And that's what I almost went through of, okay, I kind of forget what God did for me at youth camp. Now I'm going to go back to oh, I like sports, I'm going to follow sports. And it's just this up and down thing.
Yeah, it's such an easy trap to fall into. I've been in holiness, been busy saved most of my life, but it's, you start letting, hang on, what was you just saying that I liked and struck home? I don't remember. I'll probably remember in playback, but it's, what were you just?
The children of Israel through Judges.
Oh, yeah. Okay, now I remember why my thought process was off. But it's so easy to see what everyone else is, not put in the effort. I've looked at myself, like you were saying, you would do how many hours of football and then not give God that much. And I've looked at my life sometimes and think, I've either thought, oh, I'm doing all right, and then not actually be putting that much effort. Then I wonder why I don't see the things that my parents, my grandparents, or whoever, just someone else in the church even, what they put in. It's like, well, of course I'm not getting the same results. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Well, of course, the funny thing is, just last night, Uncle Fred preached on God as a rewarder and talked about how you're not always worthy. His example that really hit home for me. At this point, I don't even know if I'm going to put this on, but well, hey, who cares? Maybe in editing it, it'll help me again, but no. But his example that really hit home for me was if there's a crime, they'll put out a reward, say so much money for information leading to arrest. You don't have to be involved in the crime. You don't have to know someone in the crime. You could just have happened to be in the right place at the right time. No benefit. So, and then so read your Bible, listen to your pastor who'll probably explain something about it. It's not just, your effort is not proportional. It's a good thing because,
right.
Yeah. Anyway, Brother John here did a good job preaching. I wouldn't do such a good job being the follow-up preacher in this case.
No. But no, along those lines of the rewarder, I would go from being a sinner out in the world. I'd show up to a youth camp and I reap the rewards of the people fasting. The man that would not lead the night services, but the night speaker. He'd fast, he'd do all these things to prepare for service, and I came in and I reaped the reward of every single bit of it. God blessed me because of what he did. And I'm talking about those lines of not needing, you weren't part of the crime, you didn't do anything, you just came up and was like, hey, I have one piece of evidence, and you get rewarded for it. I went up, just tried to the Lord's touching me, so I'm just going to go, and I didn't know how to pray. I didn't know how to seek God. I just went up and was like, okay, I see people around me raising their hands, so I'm going to raise my hands. And God blessed me. I kind of was just copying other people. And the Lord was like, yep, he's at least trying, and he blessed me for it. And that's it. Slowly through those times getting touched there, that was when I knew, because God through the years showed me the love of the people, the love of the holiness people, and I fell in love with everybody, and I was like, this is who I like to be with. And then through those last couple of years, he showed me his power. He showed me his touch. He let me feel a little bit of it. So when it was almost like he was slowly preparing me for when my grandma passed away, I realized I need to get back to where I was. I know right at first I got saved because of I wanted to go to heaven, but I could go on because I got back and I knew all the touches I got. I remembered all those touches, the things that the world and what the devil tried to blind me from, made me forget, came back to me. And my life, people have said it, my life was, all my compasses were pointed in the wrong direction. After I left high school, my life went so downhill so fast because I decided not to pursue anything. And not saying that anything out there would have been good, but God opened my eyes enough. I don't know if it's Paul Wiley, his testimony. I don't know if it's Paul. I think it's a Wiley, I know. I don't know, remember which one, but they said he was addicted to alcohol. He was an alcoholic, and he had to wake up every morning. Before he opened his eyes, he reached over onto his nightstand and took a drink of whiskey, whatever bottle. He had to drink alcohol before he got up because he had to drown out everything. And before he got saved, like the week before, the weekend before, I can't remember how many days before, God delivered him of his addiction so he could go to church, so he could get saved. And I feel like the Lord, through my grandma passing away, opened my eyes to what all my life had become, and kind of, okay, I gotta get back on this road. And I went from being my compass pointed in every single wrong direction you could say, and he turned it around because of my grandma showing me the love of God through those years, and me just knowing that the Holiness people is right, and these people around me have what I want. I had a point that I was going to go and mention real quick, but I can't remember it now.
We've already had several stops and go. Give it a minute. It might come back to
it. Might come back. But no, I testify a lot about the consistency of everybody around me, because through those years of divorce, through those years of me, I was a young man. I was divorced, but 5th grade or 4th grade, that's getting up to 10 years old. And past those years, you're trying to define yourself as a human. You're trying to figure out my personalities, those like from 10 to 20 in my eyes really have made me who I am. I know I'm only 22, but it slowly has changed my personality through those years. And when you have no consistency, when you're having to change yourself, when I had to be one person around my dad, then one person around my mom because they had completely different rules. It's you need that consistency as a young man, and that's what the Holiness people brought to me. And God, seriously, through that, like I said, I can say how many times he blessed me and stuff, but he seriously blessed me through the people of God. And I didn't come in, I wasn't helping, I was just showing up and, you got to lift a couple things here and there, John, but then the rest of the time I just enjoyed being with the Holiness people. And that's truly, God blessed me through those years of just getting to know everybody. Holiness is the people. It just are amazing. The Holiness people, my Holiness family, the people I can call family now, are just amazing.
That's what just went after the hypocrites and the Pharisees and all, because they weren't consistent. And if we hadn't been consistent, where would you be today?
Right, exactly. If I showed up and you guys one time loved me to death and showed me the love, and then the next time I came around, you guys just pushed me to the ground and just was like, yeah, well, you left again. That isn't what a Christian would do. But if you were hypocrites, if you decided one time, we're going to be friends to him, and then the next time he shows up and he isn't benefiting me anything, because I seriously was not a benefit to the Holiness movement in those years, I could have easily been like, oh no, you stay over on the outskirts. We don't need you. You just stay over there. But no, I came and there was love in it. It was a consistency of God and his spirit. And I had a life of consistent inconsistency is what I had. Every day was different. I didn't have one day that was the same as the day before, but now through those years, I got little glimpses of consistency, and now I can live in that life where every day is consistent in the serving God, my goals in life of trying to move forward towards him. My aunt and my uncle, I call them my second mom and dad, because they're consistent. They're what a Holiness mother and father should be, and they've been great examples, great father and mother to me spiritually. And it's just, consistency is key, some people say, and it's completely true. And I think some people, or sometimes I've told the testimony or parts of the testimony that parts of my testimony has always been through stories. Like, I've given details about wrestling. I've given details about just things in school that I did, not sin, but me. I never touched a drop of alcohol. I didn't smoke, but I had other things that just drew me further away from God. Just like some people, like I know some people in our fellowship delivered from drugs, delivered from pornography, these things in life that have such a grip on young men that aren't Christians. And I get it. Christians deal with it also, but I slowly give details out just in jokes and telling little stories and stuff. So I've probably told my complete and total testimony, but through a year of joking and just having small conversations, because sometimes one little thought that might be the best part of my testimony doesn't come out until we're in a certain conversation. And I always try to deliver it in a joking way because I don't like being that serious half the time.
Yeah.
But I know what I don't want to say. The things I don't want to say I did when I was in sin. I know the things that, oh, John, you weren't addicted to alcohol and you didn't sell drugs and you weren't on heroin half the time and all. Yeah, but there's certain things in my life that was like, that is not what I want to tell. Because it's sin, and I'm not trying to say, oh, I was fine and it was good stuff. No, because it's bad stuff. It's just, you don't want to tell people, I did this. And through the sports, especially through the sports area, I've tried to draw the line because I was chose to represent the northern part of the California in a big football thing for what they call the Lions Club. I was chosen to. I'm not trying to brag or try to show it in a good light because I was athletic. I had the ability. I was going to go at least do college and go 4 years in college eventually. I was going to do sports. And so I'm not trying to draw it in such a light of, oh, sports was so good and, oh, the sin was great. No, because it isn't. Because at the end of the day, I know all those things that if you guys take it wrong or if I take it wrong, that's what I dealt with. I dealt with the looking at sports in such a good light when it wasn't good at all for me. And I don't want to draw sports in a good light because
that was your Achilles heel.
Yes, exactly. And so I've told some testimonies at work that, oh, this is how far I was going to go. These were my plans, but now I'm living such a better life. Oh, I may have never been good enough to do pro football or good enough to go anywhere with football or anything. But I do not want to paint that, oh, if I did, this is what could have happened. Because no matter how...
going to be the cost?
Yes, exactly. Can you afford not to serve God? Is kind of how I've heard somebody ask that. Or when somebody tells you, I can't really believe in God because that's just outlandish. Can you afford not to believe in God? Because that's with the sports, I may have went here. I may have been the best professional football player ever. I may have done these big things in my life and made this much money. But if I'm on the road to hell, it doesn't matter how glamorous my life is. I'd rather live dirt poor, barely making it, but going to heaven.
Well, and how many people of either wealth or fame, you get people who, naturally get curious about their actual lives, and it's not all it's cracked up to be.
Right.
You don't envision that for your future.
No,
but
exactly.
If you do, you're probably seriously depressed and need to see self-plug for Walter and Misty Sell's testimony. I do not know if we're even going to be airing this part of the episode, but why not plug it, if only to delete it.
I know if I followed and I kept on going with what I did, looking now, back then, I thought my life was fine. I seriously thought I have my troubles and my trials and whatever, but everybody goes through that. I'm fine. Looking back now, I could have easily been the hobo that has nothing to look forward to ever, that's addicted to drugs. My life was pointed in that direction. If you saw me at the time and heard me and talked to me, you probably would have thought, oh no, he's fine. He'll just work a 9-to-5 job, be a regular Joe forever. But my life was slowly pointing in a way that I was going to ruin it. I was not going to live good. And that's my family around. I haven't told all of my testimony to everybody because there are parts that don't need to be said. They don't know. They would have probably thought, okay, he just would have been going to hell, just living bad. But to really express how I would have been a hobo, either I probably would have ended up in jail, something, I had major anger issues. I had a lot of things wrong with me, and not a lot of things mentally. Like I had not mental issues in the fact that some people go through these things where their mind doesn't work.
Bipolar, Alzheimer's,
Yes,
etc.
exactly. I still, but there was something off. I didn't.
The battle in the mind.
Yes, the battle in the mind. And I wasn't going to say I was going to full depression, but I was so up and down that I was inconsistent. That my day-to-day, I wouldn't say bipolar. I was the same personality, same person. It's just I was radical, either one way or the other, of that same mood. And
you had nothing tethering your emotions.
Yes. Dude, how do I don't know how to explain that, but yeah.
Actually, we should keep sitting here talking. The more you talk, the more interesting stuff comes out.
Exactly.
Even if I don't air this is interesting.
Exactly. Because I don't want to go and say I was mentally ill going through these things, but I know if I slowly kept on going on that path I did, it may have been 10 years, but I probably would have ended up homeless doing these things because I had no sense of money. I didn't grow up. My dad, he was a good father for the world. I'm not going to say that he was a holiness dad guiding me to God, but he was a good father for the world. But when I started my first job, there's some things that I did not understand, and my sense of money, all that was off. The girl I was dating at the time, just my entire situation did not look good in any way possible. But that also I could go through all of that and show you and say how good God is, because I went from the wrongest I've ever been through those last couple of years, my life just going downhill, me not thinking that it was, but it was, to completely reverse the other way. I haven't looked back because I never want to. I can't afford to look back. Lot's wife looked back and she turned to a pillar of salt. If I look back again, I'm not going to take this third offering of grace that God gave me, that I got saved again. I'm not going to take that for granted, because that's what I did. I took those offerings of grace that he gave me and I said, you know what? Those were nice and I feel better now, but now I can kind of focus on what I want, because now those things that were in my head, they're gone. So I can focus on what I want. No, completely wrong.
That'll probably stay in, because I imagine we all deal with that. I'm probably going to have to think back and start realizing just how much I do stuff like that, or how much I probably would do. Actually, not necessarily that that's happened before, but sometimes I wonder, God, is the reason you're not answering instantly is I would squander it?
Yeah.
I have looked at myself very recently and thought that's what would happen. And that right there, you described it in a very good way.
Yeah, because I've taken those opportunities and I took advantage of them. There's a song that I can't really remember the words, but in the second verse, it goes over that I have taken advantage of the grace that you've given me, and I've taken advantage of your grace, so I'm going to live for you. But I took it and I went, thank you, God, and I threw it off to the side because I felt better. I'm going to run off with what you gave me and whatever. It's like the prodigal son. And the more I look at my testimony, the more I can kind of relate to it. Because at first I didn't really think about it this way. But the prodigal son, God gave me in those years I got saved my share. When the prodigal son asked for his share and he went off into the world, I took that grace that he gave me and I went and spoiled it. I ended up in the hog pen. And I came back that second year to youth camp. And he opened up his arms to me again. Undeserving as always, but God opened his arms up to me and said, come here, let's throw a party. And then I went again and I said, hey, thank you for all that joy and you made me feel good, so I'm going to run off again. I got my share of what I need. Okay, bye. I'll tell you about one experience I had, and I looked back at it, and I realized the first time I ever felt conviction. After the first youth camp, I got saved. I came back to the next one, and I can't remember who was preaching it, but they started preaching on backsliders. And at the time, I was like, this isn't for me. I've never been saved. I didn't know what being saved was. It took me a first couple weeks of when I got saved at 18 to kind of realize, oh, being saved means like you're not going to hell. So, he was talking about backsliders, the preacher, that night, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, that's not for me. But I slowly kept on with what he's saying. I was like fighting it with what I had in me. That isn't for me. But I felt this just drawing, and I felt it. And I told my cousin recently, I said, I think that's the first time I ever felt conviction, because he had my name written down, and you're preaching to John tonight. And my not really knowing spiritual things at all, I was still fighting that. It was straight pointed at me. My spirit, my flesh was like, no. But I was confused. I'd never experienced that before, but I can look back now and say I was convicted. He had my number that night.
And just refused to admit it.
Yeah, I refused to admit it.
As a shield.
Yes. And then I randomly thought about that one day, and I told Adam about that. I said, I think that's the first time I felt conviction, because it hit me. I knew that message. There was something about that message, but in my head I was like, that can't be to me. I wasn't a backslider, but looking back now, I was. And it's like, wow, I didn't know that was conviction, but now I look back and God was pulling for me. He pulled for me all those years, and I didn't notice at all. I just was like, oh, I'm just going around here, la da 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 da, and God was pulling for me at every single moment.